So we're going to go ahead and start here now. I want to welcome you. My name's Jason Lazarus. I'm a photo instructor here at UAF through the art department, but I'm also a board member with the Alaska Photographic Center. I want to welcome you to the first in-person artist lecture that we've had for the Alaska Photographic Center since COVID started. It's really nice to be back to hybrid meetings, allowing more of Alaska's unique photographic community to meet, connect, grow, and collaborate with each other. For those that don't know, APC is celebrating its 40th anniversary this year, promoting and supporting fine art photographers and photography in Alaska since 1983. APC offers monthly artist talks about 6 to 8 months out of the year, introducing our members as well as artists throughout the world to our own far-flung Alaska-based artists, from Juneau to Kotzebue and Homer to Utqiagvik. We've been proud to present Alaska's photographic talent for the last 40 years. On top of those monthly talks, APC organizes the largest photographic art exhibit in the state called Rarefied Light. Its 2023 iteration will be opening at Anchorage's International Gallery for Contemporary Art. It's quite the mouthful there, on October 6th. Following that, it'll open up in Bear Gallery on December 1st here in Fairbanks. And then following that, going to Kenai and Soldotna. New for this year, we're excited to announce that we'll be traveling to Homer's Pratt Museum for the final exhibition to be shown all next fall. Jennifer Spielman was our 2023 Rarefied Light juror, who over the summer offered an amazing workshop on creating your own photo-based zines for distribution. The juror for 2024 Rarefied Light is Elaine Smithson, and the call for entry for that traveling exhibition will be open in March. Please consider becoming a member of APC to help us bring more of these exciting opportunities to people like you. Tonight, I'm so excited to introduce Lindsay Saunders as our speaker. I've been following her work on Instagram for years and years, and I've always been in awe of her constant and diverse creative explorations. Lindsay is a visual storyteller whose passion for history, childhood, and fine art converge seamlessly in her captivating photos. Her photography seeks to capture the essence of innocence, curiosity, and the magic that defines the early years. Lindsay is a dedicated and beloved local art teacher at Ryan Middle School and has been featured on the cover of Click magazine and published by National Geographic. She's also the owner of Forest and Field Photography here in Fairbanks. Please join me in welcoming Lindsay to tonight's talk.
Okay, so I'm a history and art teacher in the Fairbanks district, and I'm the mother of 4. I grew up in Two Rivers, Alaska. I have 3 sisters. I earned my BA in history back here at UAF in 2013, and then I ended up earning my MED in 2016. So I love secondary education. That's kind of where my passion is these days. So there are some major elements that really inspire my photography just constantly. The number one being the 7 elements of art. Those very much guide me and my creations and my inspirations. Second would be childhood, evoking that feeling of nostalgia. Drawing, painting, illustrations, that is always my go-to. That's kind of where I started with art. I love drawing, I love painting, I love creating paper mache, and that is kind of what has driven me into the world of photography. I'm always inspired by literature, like my favorite books. Theater, I love to do theater, and that does kind of pour over into me making the most ridiculous sets for my photos. It very much kind of, pours into that. History, I was a trained history teacher. I love history, and if I can, I try to meld that with my photography too. Teaching. I found a lot of really neat ways to teach online as well as in the classroom with middle schoolers. I'll just say this right away. You guys are a lot easier to present to than middle schoolers. If I had Zoom fail in middle school, it would be apocalyptic and I would be crying under the desk. So just thank you for being patient. So teaching very much is my passion too, and it's been really, really cool to find ways to reach out to adults and find ways to teach them online. And it's really gotten me a little bit more, technology literate. Nature and baking. So during the pandemic, I got very into baking. A lot of people got some weird hobbies during 2020, and mine ended up being pie, and you guys will see that in a minute. But it somehow also found its way into my photography, and it, drove me into learning how to do flat lays. So I don't know if you guys need a refresher, but I'm going to give you one anyways. And hopefully you guys, it's a little bit cut off, but we're going to use value, space, and line and 5 common compositional rules to do photography. So I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of background on the elements of art, because a lot of times in photography, there are not maybe called elements of art. It's called like compositional rules. And we'll talk about like texture, leading lines, just how you can set up a compositionally beautiful photo, but I think of it more as like setting up almost like a painting. So so I use line a lot. So the most dominant use of leading lines is one that draws the attention to the viewer to the main subject of the image. And then I use negative space. It's all about leaving space and lots of it in the image to ensure that the main subject occupies a small portion of it. This can give the photo a feeling of vastness or mystery. Symmetry is closely related to beauty, we all know that, and it's the exact correspondence of form and the opposite sides of dividing line. I know it's very technical, but really perfect symmetry is always very eye-catching. And when all else fails, when I feel like I can't really capture a lot of other elements of art, I love to really focus on symmetry, because at least that is like a very eye-catching element. Placing the most important aspects of the image on one of the intersecting points. If you're a photographer and artist, you know how we break up a canvas or how we break up an image to really make it more interesting to the viewer. We call it the, what's it, 3/4 rule, ratio rule? Rule of thirds, there we go. So we break it up, and then we have like the golden ratio rule. But, when you think about where you're going to place the subject of your art piece, you want to think about, besides just setting it right in the middle, you want to put it in an interesting intersecting point. The horizon line should also be 2/3 of the way down or up, depending on whether the sky is more interesting or the foreground is more interesting. I remember this a lot from Charles Mason's class, and he brought up a few photographic examples of like, the horizon line, and it really did make such an impactful difference where you put that horizon line. Right in the middle just killed it for me. So that is one that really stuck with me from his class. So I use line pretty often in my work. Sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing it because I practice this so much. Diagonal lines really give movement and dynamism to a composition. So here, there's a lot of lines. I tried to draw them for you, but really there are a lot of different intersecting points and lines that really create kind of this chaotic movement in the piece, which really matches what my subject is actually doing in the photograph. Horizon lines really create the feeling of stability and calm. Zigzag lines alter directions fast and create feelings of unrest, turmoil, and movement. So we kind of see that over here too. Curved lines change direction gently with no sharp angles and suggest a lot of comfort. And it kind of puts the viewer at ease when they look at that image. And then vertical lines give the impression of heightened strength and often have a spiritual connotation, which is why a lot of our churches and cathedrals are built so high, because you have that feeling of vastness and greatness when you're inside. It really like brings your eye up, makes you feel smaller. But I like using lines like that, especially in tight places. I don't know if you guys have been in the Nolwein Library, but I was taking a picture in a very tight spot with a 35mm lens, and I wanted it to feel bigger than it was. And I just knew that if I really put those books in the foreground and had those lines just going up and down, it would create that height for me. And then color groupings in photography. I know these are kind of dorky, fun examples of my kids, but I often use color, especially in the winter months when it's just gray and nasty outside and I don't feel especially excited about shooting outside. I try to find ways to bring color indoors. So I do have a lot of paper backdrops and like props that I make, but really it's just a really fun way to kind of bring some life to my photos when I don't feel entirely inspired. So complementary colors, blue and orange, right here, give the image a playful punch. My favorite color combos are always complementary. I just think they're a little bit punchier for me, and I think they're fun to look at. Here I just use kind of a mix of warm colors. These are more a little bit in the analogous realm, but they illustrate the autumn theme with a hint of complementary colors here and there to really make your eyes pop. So I'm thinking about these things when I set up a photo. Not always. This one to the left is that is a candid photo, actually. So that was a little bit unplanned, but it ended up working out. Monochromatic yellow represents youth and playfulness, and analogous colors give the photo balance. This one over here to the right, the pink, while mixing in complementary colors to give it a bit of magic contrast. So I absolutely love the symbolism of colors, and I'll use it as often as I can in my photos when I have a little bit of forethought. And if you have the time, I could have had another slide, but I know nobody wants to come here and read. But every color carries with it so much symbolism that it is worth it and worth your time to really kind of play with those symbols and, really push some themes of your photos, even if it's just for fun. So I take all those elements of art. I didn't show you all of them, but I showed the ones that I use most often. There's things like texture and form that I didn't really mention, but I go out in the world with my camera and I'm often thinking about those 7 elements of art. It's always in the back of my mind. And like I said, once you practice these all the time, it becomes so second nature that you don't even realize you're doing it, kind of, if that makes sense. So I use elements of art in everyday photography. And so this grouping of photographs that I'm going to show is more like my everyday documentary style photography. Not so much my, oh no, is it okay? Should I admit them? Okay. It's not so much my fine art portraiture photography where I have a massive setup and, a backdrop or anything. These are like, I'm on the go. I have my camera and one lens and I go out and, shoot what I see. And I'll just kind of and this is how I'm going to kind of go through this talk is I'm going to, show you the photo and maybe give you a little background on it and like my thought process and maybe what it symbolizes and how I took it. Oh no, come on. Okay, so this photo I show first is one of my favorites and it's my baby. I'm proud of this one. And it was more of a vertical crop, but I wanted to show it on the screen a little bit better and it just doesn't give that same power. This one was published on Click Magazine's cover. And I just felt really proud of it because I had this idea of really capturing this almost like yin and yang kind of perspective where we have those balanced contrasts here. We have the white background with the black shadow and the black background with a lit up subject. And I really liked that balance that it was giving me. And I went out with, I think this was my 24mm lens, and this was a full sun photo. And my daughter Daisy was just messing around with the jump rope. And I was like on the ground, just like, trying to get the angles right. And this is literally how I take photos. I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I see triangles and I'm trying to get intersecting points right. And, I'm just rapid firing. This wasn't like I got one shot and I was done. I was like, shoot, I hope I got a good one. So I was just out rapid firing. And I just, in my head, I knew I wanted that balance. Like I could see it. Our house at the time was this ugly brown. And I was like, I can't, I did edit this in color to begin with, and it just didn't have the same pizzazz. So I turned it into a monochromatic edit, and I was, I did that little scream at home because I was so happy with how this came out. And again, it was one of those photos that was more like for me, for my family, and I felt really proud of it because it had those repeating shapes, that balance, that contrast, and it had movement. It was just a fun photo for me to document what we were doing this summer. And now this is about 3 years old or so she probably doesn't jump at the jump rope as much anymore. So this was kind of a neat little moment in her childhood. This one was an accidental shot, and I always bring that up because I brought my camera to take some some really cutesy, nostalgic Ferris wheel photos, and I didn't get anything. And this was, the last day of the fair back when my daughter was a baby. So she's about 6 now. So this is about 5 years old. And thank God for, technology, because this was severely underexposed, meaning that it just came out way too dark. I had my settings toggled way too dark. I didn't even look at my camera before. I just went click, click. So I actually didn't know that I had this photo until I put it on my computer and lifted up the brightness, and I was like, gasp, because I don't think it would have come out as well had I not underexposed it. And that's kind of the crux of the situation. Because we have digital photography, we can really, really stretch our lighting a little bit more. And I was able to kind of capture those perfect highlights on the top of that rim light on the top of my daughter's head with that, that stand over there. It just to me, I was like, I love this. And it was a candid photograph. And this is another one I felt really proud of. And I really liked that blue hour effect on everything. It had that really harmonious color scheme. This one is just, my daughter drinking out of a hose, as kids do. And I, was thinking, like, I love incorporating hoses into photos. I don't know why, but I just love that it's such a nostalgic thing. Like, I used to drink out of the hose when I was a kid. It tastes like blood, like pennies. So you're like, yeah, that's real childhood. And so we're drinking out of the hose, and I was like, how can I set myself up so I have a leading line to her? So this is the use of a leading line. My horizon line maybe isn't my favorite, but she had on that red striped shirt, which I was like, it's a perfect contrast color to this green hose. And then I kind of situated myself on the ground, like I was laying on the ground, and just made sure that I was capturing this leading line that led to my daughter. So this was the use of like complementary colors and leading lines. And I just love this one. She's a goofball. And then this one, I was actually teaching a course. This one's a little bit more pose. I shouldn't say that this is candid because it's not. So this one's a little bit more pose. I was teaching a class online about leading lines and using like foreground, middle ground, background, that space that you have on a canvas or in a photograph. And I knew a lot of photographers call this layering, but like as a painter, you're just like, okay, we have foreground, middle ground, background being used. So I kind of was trying to teach a little bit about that. And so I just had Saoirse, I was like, go draw on this. And then Daisy was over here practicing ballet, actually. And that's not what I told her to do, but it ended up being epic. And her ballet teacher was sent this photo. So she's in ballet right now. So this was like, it was just kind of goofy. And this again was done with like really warmer colors, but I personally really liked it black and white. It reminded me of maybe like a street photograph you would have seen from like the 1940s or something. I really, really liked the movement in this one and just the action happening here while like she's kind of peacefully drawing over there. And then we have those leading lines from hopscotch lines. Often I love to use vintage lenses. I kind of hoard them. I started that like 10 years ago when I first started photography because I was poor and I couldn't afford like real lenses. So I was like, heck, those Helios lenses are $50 on eBay. So I got like 1,000 of those. Some of them are complete duds. And then I got like old Nikon lenses. And this is a vintage 50mm Nikon lens. And I absolutely love it. I have a star in it because it's my favorite. And this is my go-to lens when the sun is out because it creates these like beautiful flares that really help bring interest into a photograph. And then here again, I'm using just that, what photographers call layering, but just really filling in that foreground and that middle ground there with like my daughter and my son, and just kind of creating a really interesting, composition there where you're like looking through his arm. And this was kind of inspired by a Buster Keaton photograph from like 1925. Again, I get really inspired by the weirdest things, but I just, I had this picture of Buster Keaton looking through the arm of like a boxer. And I was like, that is cool. So I kind of positioned myself and tried to get that on the fly. And, Saoirse's running around with her Coke in the back and just running around. And I had to make sure that I caught it at the right time, especially with the flare. So again, this is kind of like a fun, happy-ish accident photograph where it actually did come out. And then again, I love to use those complementary colors, the red and the green. This is Healy Lake down by Denali. And they just have these really cool rocks that create a leading line on their own, like naturally. So of course it makes my photographer heart happy because it brings you to your subject. And then Daisy's jumping around there. That's my other daughter with that inner tube. And it is that nice color play where you have the complementary colors with those, green trees and the hills with that red. So it's just like little things like that create interest. And then I like that there's enough negative space around her that it doesn't feel too busy. You still get that feeling of being in the wild and nature, that vastness. And then once you get, I feel like for me, once I got those 7 elements of art, just kind of like when I figured it out for photography, it made just like travel photography so much more fun for me because on the go I can create just like fun art that I'm a little proud of and that I'm happy with instead of just like those kind of photos. I have those too on my phone, but when I bring out my real camera when we're traveling around, it's really nice to just kind of have those skills in the back of my mind to just pull out of my toolbox and use. So here we went to the Big Ben. It was 6 a.m. because we were still in Alaska time, and it was epic because nobody was there. And we were there for like an hour and a half. Not a single person came by, and it was amazing. And I just knew that like walking around there, if I could position myself so I have a leading line kind of to Big Ben, it would be fantastic. And then I had a bird fly in front of me. And this is one of those photographs that, like, again, thank God for AI, because my focus freaked out a little bit, my autofocus, and it missed the focus a little bit on my daughter's face down there. And I had to go into what I think is called topaz and just bring out the sharpness in her eye. It wasn't much, but it was enough to really annoy me because it could have been like a perfect shot. And I was like, no. I like absolutely loved the bird there. And I love when things are a little chaotic like that in photos and like a little bit unexpected. So I was able to bring out the sharpness in her eye. And that's the thing, is like, I 100% embrace AI for certain things. Like this could have been a throwaway shot, but I was wanting to save it and I could. And then here we were at Brighton Beach in England, and I just love the photo booth. I'm obsessed with those like vintage photo booths. And this again, just taking a picture of Daisy, and then my other kids would not get out of the way. I was like, Daisy, be cute, you know? And then my son walked up like, what are we doing? And then Saoirse ran up with her pictures, and, you know, it just became kind of a fun, chaotic moment. And Saoirse was like super excited, my daughter at the bottom, to show her photos, and just ended up being kind of a cool composition, I thought. And then this one was like our first night in England. And I really liked this one too, because we were all super tired, jet lagged, and we were waiting to check into our Airbnb. So we had all our luggage behind me for this photo. And I was just sitting there like, you know, and she just sat down on this chair and was like looking off. And I was like, this would be amazing. And so like, without saying anything, telling her anything, I like got my camera and was like totally voyeuristic about it. But I grabbed my camera and, you know, shot through that chair to get that layered effect and to really add that interest. Because again, this could be a really boring photo. Had I not done that, it'd just be a girl sitting in a chair. But I really like those repeating patterns, repeating greens, and just that interest of filling up your foreground, middle ground, and background. And this, again, kind of the same thing, Brighton Beach. I don't know why I love that place, but it's one of my favorite places on earth. And again, these birds just kept flying. I mean, they're everywhere there. Throw out a French fry, you're going to get a million seagulls. So it was really simple and easy to get a photo like this. Just take a few shots. So again, the seagulls are everywhere. And she was just out looking at them. And I just really liked the nostalgic feel of this. And like her little red dress with that kind of greenish blue in the background, it does kind of complement each other. And that bird adds the interest. And he kind of has that, you know, invisible leading line of his eyesight kind of directed somewhat at her. So it kind of leads you back to her. And then another thing I love to do, I have a lot of projects. Shooting through windows became a weird project of mine about 5 or 6 years ago. And I love to shoot kind of the different seasons through this same area again and again, just see how the kids grow, see how seasons change. Kind of obsessed with that. Again, it's probably just for me and no one else cares, but I love, you know, that layering that I get when I'm shooting actually right through the window and, you know, through the different seasons. And this one on the right was really, really, I'm surprised I was able to get it, because it's that blue hour in Alaska that lasts about 5 whole minutes. So you're like, whew, you know, you got to work quick. And then, nope, back. So this is a photo I took maybe a month and a half ago. And I was kind of in a rut and I was like, I feel like I haven't been making any art this summer. And I kept thinking of like, we love watermelon at this house. We're always eating watermelon. We always have a watermelon cut on the table, probably at some point. And I'm like, the kids are obsessed with it in the summer. So I'm like, I want to create something that feels really timeless, nostalgic, but interesting. And I don't know why I thought of this, but it's kind of similar to a pumpkin carving photo I took, but from a different angle. And so I was like, what if I reverse the perspective? And so I laid on the ground with my 24mm lens. Again, this is full sun. So I had to stop this down. I want to say this is on aperture 16 because it was that bright out. So everybody was pretty in focus, which was kind of nice. And I took about 12, I was like, click, 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 and then let them run off. And I was like, hopefully I got something. And I really like how it came out, because at this moment, Daisy's making fun of Oliver, my son right across there. So her eyesight is going towards him. She's laughing at him for something. He's annoyed with her, so he's looking off the other way. And then my baby's over here holding out a watermelon, being like, I got one. And then Saoirse's looking down at me, which I think is kind of what makes this photo. And with her hair blowing in the wind, like she's the only one kind of like hanging out, paying attention. And I just like that there's not much going on in this photo, but there is so much going on. And it's just based on that invisible leading line from all their eyes and expressions. So it's one of those chaotic, but kind of mellow photos. I love it. And then I know Jason was asking me to talk about social media, because that has been such a drive for me, which sounds dorky. And like, I hate to be like, I'm a content creator, because I never felt like that. It just, for me, was a weird place for me to put photos and ideas that I don't have anywhere else to put. Not that I need like an audience, but I was just like, where else are you going to put it? It's just kind of odd to be creating this stuff all the time without where to put it. So Instagram's been kind of like a weird Pinterest board for me, if that makes sense. And it's been a place for me to continuously learn and try things. So I have personally really loved social media for me. It's really inspired me to create through literature and film. So I do these, I have multiple, probably like 10 different little mini projects I have going all the time. And for me, yes, I am like recreating a master, like pretty much a master copy of somebody's work, knowing that, no, I'm not going to sell it to anybody. I'm not going to make money off of it, but it's a way for me to kind of learn techniques and learn photography. And this has probably helped me more than anything, because I haven't really taken any photography classes. It was just basically learning through failure and trial and failure. So here I got really into Spielberg, obviously, and this is supposed to be kind of based on the scene where he's going to the shed in E.T. So I just loved that scene. There was so much mystery and vastness to it, and he's so clever with his use of lighting. And I was like, I want to recreate that. So during COVID, he had his friend over who was in there like spraying fog, and I was like, again. It was just so fun. It like gave us something to do for 15 minutes. I'm obsessed with Big Fish. One of my favorite films ever. I think it's one of Tim Burton's best. Again, not going to sell this or make money off it, but it was a way for me to learn maybe how to use Photoshop a little bit better and how to maybe set up a photograph like that part in Big Fish. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but she is coming out of the circus tent, walking towards him, and everything freezes and he pushes the popcorn. And I always was like, that's so amazing. And I wanted to kind of capture that magic. And I love to do self-portraits because I'm the most readily available human around. So this was just a really fun way for me to experiment, really. And so here's the behind the scenes. Oh, so for this one, Jason, am I going to have to unmute?
Yeah.
Okay. Just kidding. Now I'm getting crazy. Pause. Nope, doesn't let me pause. This is a weird app.
Probably have to.
Oh yeah. That was gonna be more difficult than that.
I decided to recreate this Big Fish photo that I took back in 2019 as a cinema project photo. And I took these sheets and stapled up the sides to make it look like a circus tent. And then I hung these lights behind just to kind of give it that magical little bit of sparkle in the background. I am wearing one of my favorite dresses ever. It's blue, so it kind of matches what she wears in the film. And I approached this kind of like theater. So I blocked out my kids and put down kind of like gaffer's tape. Instead, I just put down painter's tape and kind of told them where to stand. And they got to have a little bit of fun with it.
It was like, that's it. So pretty much you get the idea. This is definitely me melding theater into photography. Again, this was during COVID and my production just closed down. So I was like, no. And it was really fun. So the kids got to eat popcorn and then I, set up with gaffer's tape. So they knew where to stand. It was like really chill. This took me like 5 minutes to put together. And one thing I want to point out is like how cheap I do this. I used a red sheet and a stapler, that was it. And it was just super fun to create. Again, this is that E.T. homage photo. Then I'm really, really obsessed with Little Women. You're gonna hear me use the word obsessed a lot because it truly is. I'm obsessed with so many different things, but one of my favorite books is Little Women. And I'm just always like, depending on the season, I'm always very inspired to like just recreate scenes from it or just like the feelings of Little Women. And sometimes those are like a stretch. And these were basically me. I was able to find the Meg dress online. I know it was a little crazy, but then I, overlaid the forget-me-nots. There's a line about it looking like forget-me-nots. It's ridiculous, but it's just a way for me to kind of get artistic and have fun, especially in the winter months. And this is a big thing for me is like, when it's -40 out and you're kind of stuck inside, this is how I pass my time. And then this one is, again, like this is one you might look at and not think like, oh, this was inspired by Little Women, because again, it was kind of a stretch, but I took a wreath and shot through it. And just me and my daughter, and I chose a color palette that really evoked that, holiday feel. And I just wanted to kind of capture what Josephine March wore. This sounds so dorky to say out loud, but like normal people do. So this is just, again, inspired by Little Women. And this photo did really well online for, I don't know why, but I was like, okay. So this is one of the photos that kind of went viral, which is so weird to me. So I was like, of all my photos, this one is kind of dorky, but I loved just making this. And again, like you know how it is being a mom, like you don't really get to be in a lot of photos. So I take photos of myself with my kids a lot, just so I can be in the photos. This was obviously inspired by Barbie. So I was super psyched about this movie coming out. And this is before I had even seen the movie. And I was just super excited to see it. But I always really liked the first Barbie that was released, obviously. So I went on eBay, spent $24, got this Barbie in a box, and I took a picture of the box. And again, this is me learning how to use Photoshop a little bit better, using basically props and models to create a photograph that was in my head. I didn't know if this was going to work, and I was hoping it would, but I, took a photo on the ground of the box, and then I was like, this isn't perfect. So I went to Fred's and bought a bow and came back, and I was like, now it is. So it was just really a lot of trial and error. And it was kind of fun to like shrink myself down to put me in a box. That was my favorite part. I was like, jamming out to music and shrinking myself down. I don't know. This is what I do with my timing, guys. But when I created this, I still was thinking about color schemes. Like for me, I was like, I have to have that 1950s pink color, that salmon color, that nostalgic pink color, perfect. So that took me a while to really match up. And I had photos of like 1950s wallpaper I was matching. Like it's stupid, but it ended up, I think, paying off a little bit in the end. This photo is, again, one of my favorites. It's based on Wizard of Oz. This is during the pandemic. And I think we're all in a dark place there, but I was like, I'm stuck, I'm stuck inside. And so this was like an inside outside kind of photo. And so it was supposed to be like an homage to Wizard of Oz, where I have the witch shoes on and it's black and white, before she goes to Oz. And I was really trying to push this idea that selective color can be cool sometimes, because that is like the faux pas in photography. And I was like, well, I want to make it not a faux pas sometimes. So this for me was, again, just really challenging boundaries and pushing ideas to see what would come out. And this is why I like social media, is because I feel like I can try these things out and be a little bit goofy and, put it out there. I'm always inspired by Wes Anderson. I think, who isn't? I started this project about 5 years ago up at UAF, I think. And basically it was me hating winter. And I was like, everything in Alaska is old and broken down. So I was like, but if you have a nice color filter on it, then it looks very whimsical. So I started to kind of like collect different areas around Fairbanks that I was like, this is, with the right color grading, this could be a Wes Anderson. So it became like this ongoing project of just collecting places around town. And it honestly has made me really appreciate Fairbanks a lot more, which is kind of cool. Like it ended up making me really, really love living here, because everyone's like, you're so lucky. I'm like, you're right, we are. So this one was not one of my very first, but this was kind of the first one where I was like, this needs to be a project. We were on the train. I have a lot of pandemic photos. I realized during the pandemic, we were the only people on this train. It was kids ride free. Nobody was on the train. And my daughter here was overtired and running around, and she just like slumped over. And I was like, perfect. So I took a picture right here, and then I added just a little, little caption that says internal screaming. I don't know why, I just thought it was so funny. And then I color graded this whole thing to really have that warmer, flat look that Wes Anderson's photos and movies have. So really, I just pulled down my whites and highlights and just kind of played around with the color grading a bit. Brighton Beach, England. This one, I was like, I know where that is. I got to take a photo there because I've missed it the other 2 times I've been there. So we went out there, and again, thank God for AI, because there was a guy that would not move. And I don't mean like in he was like actually jumping in front of my daughter and just kind of being obnoxious, and he was like, take a photo of me, and I was like, so I AI'd him out. So he's dead to me now. So he's gone. But this is one of those ones where I was like, come on, man. And he was an American, of course, in England. And I was like, it would be you. But it ended up coming out the way I hoped and envisioned it would. So I was happy with it. It just looks a little Where's Waldo, and that's okay. Nolwenn Library. I am so glad I took these photos, because every part of my being is so sad right now that Nolwenn is being changed. And I know, like, I'm very stuck in my ways, but this is the aesthetic that I grew up with and I love. And I'm not ready to let go of it. So I'm very glad that I got photos there. I took this one for a class. Again, we were teaching about leading lines. And so I really wanted to get those strong leading lines to my subject, who's my daughter. And I basically showed them how to edit like Wes Anderson. And so really I pulled down whites and highlights, really flatten all the highlights, pull up the shadows, pull down the contrast. And then I've kind of created my own color grading preset that I add every time. So it's a lot easier for me now. But man, this was the early days when I was just hand toggling everything. But it's pretty easy to do as long as, you know, you go to a wacky, whimsical area like this. Brighton again, I love Brighton. Brighton's amazing. This is just along the beach in Hove. So it is Brighton, it's right next to Brighton. And my kids were just running back and forth. And this is one where I just, you know, pretty much it came straight out of camera, wonderful. I just had to fix my horizon line is all. And I really think this one's fun. It kind of looks like a doll's house in the back, but those are the real buildings there. And it's just really fun and whimsical. Probably my favorite, you know, I guess it gets cut off a little bit there, but the Futura font here, and I am a nerd that knows what that is. So this bookseller, I've been following his bookshop for like 6 years, like a psycho. And I finally got to go and meet him, and I took photos there, and it was wonderful. It was better than I could have expected. And he only sells vintage books. It's basically my dream. And the whole front, I was like, this is so Wes Anderson, and this is in Cheshire, England. And, you know, I just like couldn't get past the fact that his font was exactly Wes Anderson font. I was like, but do you know? So it was in that Futura font. And so this one is actually edited on my phone. So this is one I took with my phone and edited with my phone. So if you feel like you can't take photographs because you don't have a camera, like you can do a lot with your phones now. And this is my iPhone 12. It's not even the newest, nicest one. You can go into a Lightroom app and take a raw photo and edit it there. And it's, oh, I just came on for a second. And it comes out just as nice, I think. Like I think personally, like people wouldn't look at this and maybe think it was a phone photo. Our bowling alley. Again, this weirdly got me into looking and reading about the history of our bowling alley. So like, yes, this has been like a fun photographic journey for me, but it really got me diving into like history of Fairbanks, which is kind of fun. And yeah, so this, again, during the pandemic, we, you know, just being locked inside, I just had more drive to create a little bit more. And so we went to the bowling alley and just, you know, messed around. I took photos there and color graded it to look like this. And you guys have been there, you know what it looks like. This is just color grading, just adding, you know, warmth, playing with your blues and peaches there. And I really like this one because we have really good complementary colors between the lanes and the bowling ball in our hat. And then Alaska Land, of course. The real ones know that it's called that. Alaska Land, underline, not Pioneer Park. So I love the complementary colors here in the left side. The ice cream shop that is now shut down, but it was just kind of fun. You know, this is me just trying to collect places around Fairbanks and edit them. And this over here, the right, definitely inspired by Asteroid City, of course. And then this one, this is another one that went viral, which I was like, what? I feel like sometimes my worst photos, I'm like, no. Lindsay is a tired mother. This was just me setting up something really quick in my kitchen. And then actually I was doing work for a furniture company. So I took a photo with this chair. I don't think it's what they wanted at all. I think they were wanting furniture photos, but they ended up sharing it anyways. So this company sells chairs at like Walmart and online. They're kind of a big furniture company, but I was like, this is what I did. And they didn't give me guidelines, so they took it. I got a free chair. So this again, I think this is probably the last one in the Wes Anderson grouping, but this was taken with my phone. Again, some days when I'm traveling, I just don't want to bring my big camera. It's too heavy. I don't have a mirrorless yet. I just hang out with my DSLR and my big lens. So carrying that around every day can be really irksome. So I just carried it on my phone and I took this in Lightroom app and edited it on my phone and posted it within 5 minutes. I was like, cool, we're done. And that was kind of nice. Like this is a Kensington, no, where is this? This is Kew Palace in England. And it's just this weird little tiny dollhouse kind of looking place. And it's really strange because it's like in the middle of a field. So I took this on my phone and it was, you know, it was pretty easy to do. So again, there's options. I'm always inspired by Baroque, Rococo, Americana, obsessed. Again, obsessed, I say it a lot. So I got really into this project of master copies and recreating. This photo on the right, I want to say I took that in 2016 of the girl with the pearl earring. And that won first place in a photo competition, which is always weird when it's a photo of yourself. I'm like, I don't want to see that. But it was just kind of fun. I found things in my closet and put it together. I don't know why I did it. It was just, you know, I get really bored and weird. On the left side, that was me just trying to play with, you know, concepts of I don't know, me spilling out of a canvas, who knows, I don't know, it's getting weird in the winter. But I really liked the overlay of the tartan there in the background. And it's just me playing with different textures and kind of taking one of those Madonna and child type photos. This also won a first place in a competition, and the story behind this is kind of goofy. Someone bet me $20 that I could, and this was at a photo conference that I probably shouldn't have been at because I was not very professional. I was like, $20 says I can do this, you know? And so I ran to a room, and that's a dress. And when you look at this, like, I can't believe this even got published, because you can see that that's a dress and that is a sleeve. I just pulled the dress down. And so that is a sleeve hanging out my side. And, you know, I was like, I'm gonna do the Milkmaid. I think that's what it's called. The Milkmaid by, oh my God, Vermeer, is that right? Vermeer. And then I, you know, did the directional lighting, and I was just being goofy as heck. And then I ended up turning in and it won. I was like, what? And all my friends were like, we were there when it was made. It was just a dorky, like, it was kind of fun. I've never made art with people before like that with photography. So to me, this was probably the most fun photo I've ever done, because we did it so fast. I was like, to the kitchen, grab us bananas, you know, like, it was just so quick and fast. It was like a group project gone right. It was super fun. And then I'm really obsessed with Norman Rockwell and J.C. Leyendecker. I really like Americana type art, and Rockwell and me have a little bit in common where we romanticize a lot of things. Like, he grew up in a city and not rural America, but he often depicts America like it's a rural, small town America. And I kind of do that with my photography a little bit, where I romanticize a lot of my life through my lens. So I love to recreate Norman Rockwell and Saturday Evening Post covers. I, again, became very obsessive with that, and I started to like order books. I have these giant books with like Saturday Evening Post covers, and I have them all like dog-eared, and I have like sticky notes all over them, ones that I want to recreate. And again, this is just a way for me to experiment, have fun, try things, learn Photoshop a little bit better. And it's been really fun to see where I've started and where I am now, because it was embarrassing where I was when I started, and just how far I've come by just learning and really just getting at it. I love Halloween, so of course I'm gonna recreate those Saturday Evening Post covers. The one on the right was such a labor of love, because I created that mask with paper mache, and I just was like, I have to have the exact mask. It can't be anything else. So I spent like a few hours recreating this witch mask from the 1940s, and I think it came out came out pretty okay. It came out okay. Saturday Evening Post, more here, and that is my rabbit actually doing that. So we have a rabbit that's like a cat at home, and he posed actually like that. That is not Photoshop, which is kind of funny. And then I started to blend things this year. I don't know why I got that into my head, but I woke up, I was like, I have to like mesh together Wes Anderson and Norman Rockwell, because they are so much alike. They're both Americana. They're both like whimsical. And it started to make a lot of sense to me. So then I started making that a project. So again, things are overlapping a lot. And then when I was taking Charles Mason's class, I got really into copy and advertisements. So that was a thing I wanted to learn too. And I started looking at copy advertisements, looking at advertisements from the 1990s. I don't know, that was my favorite era, the late 80s, 90s. And just looking at the text they use, how they set it up, the proportions. If I ever need this skill in the future, I don't know, I don't think so, but it was fun to learn. I made this yesterday. Yesterday, I had my family dress up like rainbow ghosts. So I get really, really into just the whole color wheel. I guess being an art teacher, you're always around that color wheel. And I just love that chromatic look of all the colors together. So for me, I think it's my fallback is just to create fun, colorful, whimsical photos. Again, they're not anything serious that I would maybe turn in for a contest or, you know, anything like that, or for a portfolio, but really it's a way for me to just keep inspired and have fun and keep creating. So I even painted my fence rainbow. So this is me again, just playing with shadow play here. I'm just really inspired. I don't know if you guys remember Martha Stewart from the 90s, but she always showed rainbow order of like her cups or her Easter eggs or her, you know, Christmas ornaments. And that always stuck with me. And I just always really liked the layouts in her magazine. So I think that it kind of influences this picture big time, even though it's nothing like anything from her magazine. That color order of flowers very much felt very Martha Stewart to me. And then inspired by history. I think this for me is probably where I get a little bit deeper with my art. There's a lot more thought put into it, a little bit more, not just for fun, but to really examine important topics, social topics, feelings around those social topics. So this one, I'm gonna not cry when I talk about this. I practiced it at home and I cried. I was like, I can't cry here, that'd be awkward. So the story behind this one is actually so personal, but I think this was one of my favorite photos I've created, even though, yeah, it's a little bit dorky. But it was just out of nowhere, I got this letter from my mom's friend in high school. So my mom passed in 2016, and I got this letter in the mail. And it was all about my mom in high school. She's like, hey, I'm your mom's friend from high school. You know, we were best friends. She taught me how to draw. She was an artist. And here's some flowers that she taught me to draw. Like, she told me all about a person that I didn't recognize or know. And I thought that was pretty kind of neat, a little bit eerie, but I was like, I didn't really know my mom before she had me. Like, and then I started thinking, oh, and then she sent this photograph too. This photograph is from my mom in high school. And then I was thinking about, like, you know, echoes. I use this word a lot, but how I am such an echo of my mother and my kids are echoes of me. And so I took this kind of Mother's Day photo that was a little cathartic for me to create. So I took this photograph of my mom and was just, you know, kind of really digging my heels into that idea of, like, your kids being such an echo of you and you're such an echo of your parents. And just the fact that, you know, even though I didn't know that version of my mom so much, like, I very much do a lot of the same things that she did. And then I was very much like her. And so, yeah, it made sense to me at the time. And so this was kind of like, I don't know if you guys follow, it's an old blog from, God, 2010 maybe, and it was called Ghosts of History. And it was this idea that, like, there were echoes and people that existed there before you in that same spot. And so I kind of went with that whole theme and created that one on the right. And I really like it. It was really cathartic. I was like, it was like a Mother's Day present to myself. And then I made this about 2 weeks ago. Love tintype photography. I love tintypes. Still haven't gotten the setup. So I faked it. I was like, I just really want to, like, see if I can fake it. Obviously, it's not exact, but I tried to get it as close as possible. So I had this whole setup with a black backdrop, and, you know, I was able to add a little bit of motion blur, added some Vaseline to my lens filter, just real cheap, like, was able to kind of recreate this tintype look of my son here. And then I brightened up his eyes in Lightroom and in Photoshop to kind of make them glow, because you know how blue eyes react differently in that UV light with the chemicals. They kind of look transparent. If you guys probably know tintype photography like that, like the Civil War portraiture. I love tintypes because they really democratized photography at the time, 1860s to 1880s. Tintypes made it so photography is a lot more available to people. So people that maybe could never afford photographs before were starting to get them all the time. So I think tintype photography is just one of the coolest little histories to dive into. So I took this photo of my son, and then I was like, but I got to take it a step further. And I ended up doing, like, a photo transfer on basically metal paper that I got from Michael's for $1. And I used Mod Podge photo transfer, let it dry for an hour, wet it, and then I actually scrubbed away the paper. So I could get, like, a real looking tintype photograph. So it was a really simple, kind of fun, very rewarding outcome. I thought it's in my classroom still. And then this one, kind of getting back into a little bit of theater, but also into history, those, you know, paper moon photos. I've always loved them. I've always been obsessed with them. So I really wanted to recreate my own. So this is all made with garbage. I just went and grabbed cardboard, painted it, cut it, taped it. I'm sitting on a stool, and I just had to make sure the moon was big enough to kind of fit me. So I just set this up and, like, right next to my kitchen, and my friend came over and I took some of her. So it was just, again, trying to really, really capture that genuine paper moon look. Was, again, I had to, like, color match the tint and make sure that, you know, my blur was perhaps in the right spot. And even though it was a pretty simple looking photo, there was still a lot of time that went into making this and editing this. Can we close that? So this one is where I started to get a little bit darker. I was like, okay, I love quilts. I know Summer Holmes in the audience. She loves quilting too. She loves quilts. Quilts have, like, such a deep history with women. They were a place where women could come together to create together, to have communities together, to tell stories together. Oral histories were passed around then. So they have a really deep connection to women in their communities. And then I started to kind of go down the rabbit hole, and I just happened to have matching quilt dresses for me and my daughter. I don't know why, but I did. And it was perfect for it. And I just started to think about, like, as women, like, you can start to feel so unraveled. And so I had this idea of just like unraveling myself, cutting my own arm off. And like, I don't know if you can see it well there, but I started to really dive into like the work that women have to do, and just how, you know, this was definitely my response to the Barbie movie. I came home and was like, oh. So yeah, my daughter there, I ended up having to Photoshop her in because I just, you know, she's 2. So I just took a photo of her playing with the doll and Photoshopped her in with me, because I really wanted that mirroring back to back like that, like mother and daughter, like what I teach her, what she grows up to be like. And yeah, so this one got a little bit deeper and darker. And then this I created, this could definitely be inspired by like Baroque painting, Rococo painting. But I think it fit a little bit more into history because of why I created it. And yeah, so these were both created at Women's History Month, and I must have been in a dark place because I was mad. So the left side, I'm biting into the apple. Obviously, that's symbolism for, you know, the forbidden fruit in the Bible. Even though they never said it was an apple, you know, it's been shown again and again as an apple. So I decided to go with that kind of symbol. So I'm like biting into the apple, like really like you had it coming kind of attitude, kind of like Chicago. And then I used raspberry juice to make the blood running. It's almost like I'm doing it purposely. I'm just mad. And just the banquet, the feast, the why am I not allowed to enjoy these things? Why does scripture tell me I can't? It kind of really gets into that symbolism of how women have always been degraded. And yeah, so even setting up this set was really cathartic. So it's actually made with diaper boxes below that piece of wood. So I was like, oh, yeah, diaper boxes built up. So it's just the, like, women can never win no matter what kind of feeling. Ugh. And then on the right side, obviously Marie Antoinette, this homage to her. And I've always been really upset with how she's been presented in history because we don't really know much about her. Everything we know about Marie Antoinette was kind of based on whoever was writing about her at the time. We actually don't have a lot of interviews or any of her own words. And so she was always kind of used by either side during the revolution in 1789. Is that right? 1789. So she was always kind of used as a symbol for both sides. And she eventually had a resurgence when they reestablished the emperor, or when they reestablished the nobility after the downfall of France during the revolution. She kind of was brought back as like a Mother Mary figure. So it's this idea that women are just used as like pawns in history, kind of like, you know, just the Tudor history, how women have just been used as pawns historically and politically. And then just like her biting into the cake was like, you know, again, kind of like with the apple, like take what I want. Come on. And then again, I got into baking, stop motion, flat lays. This became kind of a weird, fun thing for me to do. I never really liked flat lay photography until I started baking. Like, how am I going to present this in a way that is aesthetically pleasing? I'm sure I could get better at it, but it's been kind of a fun realm to get into a little bit. So I got really into baking. Ooh, go. And so it's been really fun to kind of try to set up a compositionally exciting photograph of something that does not move. So this would be like great for merchandise, like photography or anything like that. But leading lines and complementary colors, or just any kind of color combo like that, has been basically my starting point with these. So here, like, you can follow kind of the curve of the dish towel kind of around to her hand, the ghost kind of curve around. And so it's all kind of leading your eye back around, kind of hopefully maybe eventually creating a little bit of a triangle. It does not want to go. This was me bleeding my Norman Rockwell obsession into my pie making. Again, that dish towel kind of leading you up to her hand, and everything's kind of curving around to bring interest kind of around the pie pies are kind of round and you usually have to put it in the middle to, you know, kind of like, this is the pie I made. It's a little bit trickier. I feel like flat lays for me are one of the trickiest things to take photos of, just because you have to create such interest when really you're just taking a picture of a pie. Ooh. Oh, well. So same thing again, just thinking about where you're placing items. So like my salt here is kind of spraying towards the pie. So you're leading line there, the dish towel kind of wrapping around. Every one of these things is kind of placed strategically. And then I got the weirdest job through social media. And this is why I think social media is really, really cool is, I don't know if you guys know who Leica is, but they're the company that made Coraline. Henry Selick was the director and creator of Nightmare Before Christmas. He started Leica Animation. He did Corpse Bride. So they reached out to me and wanted me to make pies like 2 years in a row. And this is probably the weirdest thing I've ever done. I always tell my students, I'm like, social media can take you in weird places. But they wanted a stop motion pie. And I was like, I can do that. So this is like a combination of, I want to say like 40 different photographs just spliced together. Show that again in case you missed it. It's quick, but really, her eyes blink, they turn into buttons. Can't believe I'm talking about this. And then they, you know, her mouth gets sunshine. So this is really cool. And then they showed it, you know, on their TikTok and on their page and stuff. And it was kind of a fun venture that I never, like, had you asked me like a year ago, like, you're going to make a pie for Leica, like the Henry Selick company, I would be freaking out. Like, that's the weirdest thing that I've ever done, I think. And then inspired by seasons of nature, I think this is probably the one that I will end with because, you know, we live in Alaska and we do have so much wide open space. And I just want to show you how I, you know, take pictures of Alaska, kind of my love note to Alaska. So again, this is on the train to Denali, and I just really, really liked, you know, the epic scenery there and the reflection of my sun there in the light. And I really like, you know, again, if we're going to talk about the elements of art, we have these leading lines from the lights, from these triangle shapes. Everything's really converging here to that vanishing point in the back right here. And that focus is kind of bringing you back in on the way you stop at my sun. I just really liked this photo, and I thought it somehow captured that inside outside feel, you know, when you're on that train going to Denali. It's just a magical place. Come on. This is outside my house. Obviously, this one on the left was taken with a porch light. So simple things like that, like a porch light setup. I don't have a flash on her or anything. It's just the porch light. And then I just, you know, toned her skin not to be so bright white or blue. So killing those highlights down a little bit and warming her up. But I tried to create that leading line with a scarf here. Then this one on the right, I just took Daisy out in my yard, and this one I did have a flash. I just put it right behind her, and this is straight out of camera. So this is one of those photos I was like, sweet, I don't have to do anything. It is done. So I just took a photograph with, I want to say this is 85mm lens, and it was really neat because her breath created this like crystal rainbow kind of look. And because, you know, just like the way a water vapor hits the light creates that rainbow effect, it was really, really kind of neat to get that. And I liked the vastness and the space in this too. It is cropped down a little bit here because the original is a lot more space. And then this is in my backyard with the bluebells. And then I was going to walk you through me editing a photo just like this, just a different iteration. And this was, again, kind of in the woods behind my backyard. And again, I've set up a continuous like flash. So it's basically set to flashlights. So this could just be any kind of ice light or any continuous light. And it was bouncing off the snow enough to like kind of light her up in the front. And this was taken during blue hour. My favorite time to shoot in winter in Alaska is blue hour. But like I said, it's really, really that short time frame that you get to work with. So I'll show you, if anyone is interested, how I edit that really quick, and hopefully it's all set up right. So we're going to start off with this photo right here, and hopefully, can everybody see that on the Zoom screen? Cool. Okay. So I wanted to kind of find one where I don't have to really play with color too much. Like, I really like it. This is straight out of the camera. And as you can kind of see, there is my flash right behind her. And in my head, I was just imagining like kind of like a fairy tale scene. Like, this is such a beautiful area. Like, you know, when the snow is covering all of those spruce trees, it just feels like a German folk folktale or something. So I really liked the blue hour effect. And so pretty much straight out of camera, I really liked it. So let's actually go over here and this is straight out of camera. So really, really liked the blue coloring here. And actually I wouldn't do too much to the editing here, but there are some things that obviously I'm going to want to fix that I'm not happy with, like the fact there's a flash on the left side. That would not be something that I would leave in. And probably this light right here on the right side is grabbing too much attention, and it takes attention off of her. And, you know, whenever you have those bright highlights, your eyes go to the bright highlights first. So with AI, I love AI now. It's my new friend. In the past, when I edited this, I just hand cloned everything out, and it took me so long to do right. So I edited this just as a trial today during my lunch break, and I did it in like 5 seconds, and I was like, man, I definitely lean into technology when I can. So here I would actually probably pull down the highlights a little bit. For that blue tone, if you want a little bit more blue, you could slide it over here. Obviously, this is just your white balance. I want it to be a little bit more purpley, actually. It's just my own, because she has on a yellow suit. I want those colors to be a little bit more complementary. So I want them to be more on the purple side, just a bit. I really like how the light is kind of giving a rim light effect around her face. And I like this little puff of breath here. I think that's really cute. So I actually wouldn't do too much with this. Maybe pull down contrast just a little bit, or this. Yeah. And then, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit in Photoshop. So I don't know if any of you guys have this downloaded or if you have any interest, but Photoshop beta is pretty awesome. 3 months ago, I don't think it was working as well as it is now, because remember, it's gathering data every time you use it, which if that scares you, maybe don't use it. But it's gotten really, really just efficient. It's been a lot better. So to clean this up, I would probably go here, and I'm not that one. I'm going to use the lasso tool. I'm quick and dirty with this. I'm going to cover it, and then I'm going to generative fill. I'm going to ask it to remove. So keeping it as simple as possible has really seemed to be what works the best. So let's see what we come up with. Sometimes it does the weirdest stuff and adds things to it. When I was working on a ghost photo of my son, it added very beautiful lady legs to his ghost sheet. So it does mess up sometimes, but we were like cackling, you know, we're like, ah. So as you can see, like, that's amazing. And the iterations that it has are honestly incredible. The fact that it takes the surrounding information and fills it in just blows my mind. Like, this would have taken me so much longer. I would have come up probably with a very close end result, but it would have taken me 45 minutes. I would have been like staring at my screen, like, is it messed up? But this is like, look at that. That's incredible. I'm good with that one. And then here, it's too bright. I'm going to see if I can just remove this. And sometimes it doesn't work, like I said, but you know, when I tried this on my lunch break, it filled it in with like a nice blue snow. And I was like, Eureka, this is amazing. See, cool, right? So cool. So I actually really like that one better, but I'm gonna go with that because now we have focus on her and we don't know where the light's coming from. It doesn't matter. It's magical. So this, to me, I really like this photo, but again, I would say compositionally wise is maybe not as interesting. Maybe this needs to be a little bit wider. I wanted her to feel like she's kind of lost in the bigger forest. So you can do things like this, where you, instead of cropping it, you're dragging it out. And then I can do, let's change that. So we're going to turn this to generative expanding. Let's see if this works. So as you can see here, the rule of thirds here, we have that intersecting point right kind of here on her face. A little bit better right there. And then we can really create a little bit more interest, and then it just makes her feel a little bit more like she's in this vast forest. Let's see if this works. And if you are using this at home, sometimes this takes so long. Like, I can get up and make a coffee and sit back down and it's still thinking, but UAF's internet is quick. So thank goodness for that. But yeah, like I said, sometimes it's, you know, it's getting all the information from around. But yeah, so it's really neat what you can do with AI. Now, again, this isn't taking like a, oh, there we go, that's perfect. So this obviously is a documentary photography. This isn't going out and shooting something that you really see. This is just a different style of photography. And I personally think that there's room for all types of photography. I really like documentary photography. It's probably actually my favorite photography. but I don't do it as much as this because I personally like the excitement of learning new skills like this and just really diving in and trying things and just, trying to explore and stay curious. And so for me, I'm always kind of creating these types of photos that I can just kind of expand, work on, change, because I really like just that curiosity that I'm kind of driven by. So this is like, okay, but there's one little piece of magic that I can add to. Just clear all this, sorry. So many things open. Okay. So I took photos of the snow a couple, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And this is a really cool thing that if you do photography, you can go out and make your own snow layers. I personally would never buy them because they look really fake. And whenever they're kind of made in Photoshop, they look digitally drawn and it just looks really funky. So I actually went out one winter day when the snow was falling pretty hard. And I went out with, my porch light on and I just took photos of the snow like a crazy person. And then I can pull them onto here. And if I want to add like a little bit of winter magic, I can just pull them and then I set it to screen. And then you can add more realistic type snow. And so I like this because they are, layers that I've made myself. And again, I think hand-drawn snow in Photoshop looks real funky. And even this, it can be a little cheesy and that's okay. Like if you were doing photography for any marketing or anything like that, these are like kind of good skills to have. So yeah, and then you can just change the opacity so it's lower. And I would probably count this as done after I clean up her face a little bit so there's not a bunch of snow over it. And you can see that this was like a really quick kind of easy edit. With AI now, if I was hand cloning this, it would take an age and a half. But yeah, so that's something for you guys to check out if you are interested. Again, not documentary photography, but it's kind of a fun way to learn and just expand and try different things. Okay, I think that's a wrap. All right, so.
Great, thank you so much. Lindsay, I'm going to let you unmute there so you can take questions.
Okay, let me just pull up where I'm at. Okay, here it is. And then can I pull this out bigger? And should I stop sharing? There, okay. I can see myself again. All right, and then let me make sure. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Now on the side, are there any comments? I don't even remember where to find that. Oh. Okay. So in the meantime, any questions in the audience? I know I cover so many random different things and I just kind of go everywhere with my art.
Really enjoyed your presentation.
Well, thank you, Joan. Appreciate that. Because it was kind of everywhere. I tried to organize. I was like, does this make sense?
No, it didn't make sense.
Thank you.
It's great.
Thank you. Summer, did you have a question? Yeah. Go for it, girlfriend.
Do you sleep? And if so, when? And how?
Well, my husband's in the back and he knows I'm sleeping a lot more than I've ever slept before. So yeah, same for you. I think for me, just creating, I will not feel alive unless I create something every day. I don't know if that's normal, but I feel like most artists probably feel that way. If you're not creating, you're thinking about creating, you're planning up creations. Photography for me, I love because I can create a lot faster. And when you're painting something, it takes weeks, it can take months. And I absolutely love that type of creating, but man, I feel like I don't have time for it. So photography for me has been a really nice outlet to create quicker, if that makes sense.
When is the pie book coming
out? See, and I thought about that, but I keep recreating pop culture references. So I'm like, can I publish that? Disney would probably come after me so quick. How dare you use the Muppets without permission? Fair use. But yeah, I do have some original designs that I could do. I could make that happen.
Bring that on March 14th.
March 14th. Yeah, Pie Day. Okay, I don't think there's any other questions in the Zoom. If you guys have any questions, you can just put them in the chat now. I can see the chat now. I figured it out. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to ask, comments, anything.
Anyone else in the crowd?
Hecklers are allowed.
Your kids like being in the photos all the time, or do you?
Some kids don't, some kids do. Daisy loves it. I don't know why. She's really been eating that up lately. Since she got on the cover of a magazine, it's gotten to her head. She's like, I'll do it, Mom. It's no big deal. I'll do it. I love to do it. Like it's, and then because her friends are like, you're on a magazine. She's like, yeah, it's no big deal. That's all. Like, what have I created? A monster. I think I try to keep it. I don't know. I try to like, I think that's with pre-planning, like not planning on the fly. But mostly I've really gotten to the point where I'm like, I got to respect their space, and I like to travel photos are my favorite because really just taking photos as we go and just boop, 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 you know, like you would with a phone or something. And really that's me just trying to like make sure like, so it's exciting for me. It's almost like sounds psycho, but like hunting spots, but like getting a really cool view, but on the fly really quick. And like your second's gone because the kids are gone. Like, you know, you got to take a photo there before it's too late. And so for me, that's like so exciting. That's like my hunting season is traveling. It's so weird to say. But yeah, like definitely my son is a little, like definitely a little bit more grony about it, but I like, for me, like I want to make sure I get photos of him sometimes, because otherwise right now he's an 8th grade boy. He's like, why do I gotta do anything, you know? So I gotta make sure I have a picture of him somewhere. One a year is fine.
So Lindsay, I photographed my sons, so they were my subject also. And so I'm just curious, so because of the colors and you're using the element of the contrasting colors, I'm just curious, when you were photographing your daughter with the holes,
Yeah.
and she was wearing that white and red striped shirt.
Yeah.
Does it just so happen she had that red and white, or
Yeah.
did you plan it?
Yep.
It was just
That
so-
one.
I just think that's so spontaneous.
And it bumped me out a little bit because my lens, at the aberration that it created, like I worked on it so long to kill it. Aberrations basically when the colors kind of diffuse a bit. So we have the chromatic aberration. So if you look close on that one, it has aberration of green, and I was, because I could not get that to go away no matter how much I toggled it, just because I was using a vintage lens too for that photo. So again, like I actually wish she wasn't wearing that shirt, because now I'm looking at it and that's all I can see. Even though I think it's a really cool contrast. That one bugs me actually so much. So never bring it up again, Dan. No, I'm just kidding.
Lindsay, you're so prolific, which is really exciting. All of the photo, like each time you take a photo, it feels like a gem. At least that's what comes across.
Stop, you're gonna make me
on social
cry.
media. For me, I think that's why you feel like you're so popular.
Oh.
Do you feel like you've become more prolific since becoming a mother? And if the answer is yes, why?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I didn't really create photography before I was a mother. Again, like I feel like the way I look at social media is like a Pinterest board. And I don't know if that's like a normal way to look at it or if that's how most people look at it, but it kind of freaks me out a bit, just the competitive weird nature and just the marketing on it. So I tend to like post and go like a Pinterest board. So I don't know. I never really made this type of artwork. Like I didn't really touch photography until I had kids. And then I really picked up when I had Oliver, and oh my gosh, I should have brought some examples and samples from when I started photography, because it would give everybody in this room so much hope. It was humbling. Like I was so proud of these photos, and I feel bad that these are his kid photos because they're so poorly edited and they're just bad. And I'm like, I don't even have the originals anymore. It's like, you know, you know, where everything's black and white, but his selective color pumpkin is like really poorly done. And it makes me sad. But I really got back into photography. I did it in high school. I loved it when I was a kid, but it was more like point and shoot stuff. And I never really made that connection between like fine art, like painting or drawing. Never really made that connection with photography until like probably 2018. It kind of finally clicked for me. And I was like, oh, I can just use this space like a canvas. Like I can kind of like pull in elements of art and kind of really like see the world differently. But no, like I definitely feel like I've only become more prolific. I hate to, I don't feel prolific, but I feel like prolific as an artist since I had kids, because I wanted to capture and remember and like, you know, hold on to it all, because they're going to be grown up and then I'm just going to be taking photos of pies. So that's my backup plan. Pies and architecture. people ask me all the time, like, what are you gonna do when your kids are older? I was like, well, I'll take pictures of them adults too, like, but also pies, architecture, gardens, flowers, like I love it all. And it's just gonna be another challenge that I'm gonna have to figure out and learn too. So yeah, that probably did not answer your question. I just like walked in a huge circle.
So I had a question. Hi, I'm Hosanna.
Hey,
So well, first of all, do you work with like clients, like you take photos of other for people?
yeah, I do. I have some of them in the audience right now. I have a photo shoot with one of them this weekend.
Oh, that's awesome.
I do.
So I've been trying to get into more of doing that myself. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm finding difficult, like, and right now I'm really just working with my family and my sister-in-law, like she was like, I want a photo shoot in the rain. And then like, how do I take like their idea, like a client or whether it's a friend or what, and like really incorporate that in as a photographer? Like they're like, I want something in the rain, and then they send you Pinterest photos, and then you're like, like how do you sort of figure out how to bring your own ideas in and actually make a photo that's just not copying somebody else that they had seen, or and also trying to do what their idea is?
So I know that super well. When I first started my business, that's kind of how I started was, I was charging like $50 an hour. I had a Canon Rebel. No diss to anyone who still uses that, but I was starting out very bare bones, and I was basically recreating Pinterest ideas people had, and I did not love it. And I couldn't like at the time pinpoint why this was no fun to me. And then like, it just wasn't, it's just like regurgitating something that already exists on Pinterest. So I still have that happen. I would say not as much anymore because I feel like there's a little bit of a movement away from that and people like more of the candid photography. So I've only had it happen a few times, but more like I just have a really deep conversation with people beforehand. And if I know them beforehand, then it's a lot easier to like talk with them about it. But I have no problem like messaging back and forth, even calling them, talking to them, and just really like expressing them like, yeah, we can definitely incorporate some of these ideas, maybe the moods, and, just work with, the environment we have and just really talk them through it versus just like recreating a photo that you have seen, if that makes sense. I've had people reach out and be like, I want a Wes Anderson shoot. I'm like, heck yeah. And, and for that, I've been like, especially location scouting, make sure that you know the location you're going into if you can. So like, if you're going to a client's home, it's really nice for them to like send you photos to kind of get an idea of the layout, what it looks like, maybe notice some areas you can photograph. And same thing, like if you're going to go to a different environment, like if you're going to go outside and shoot, it's always a great idea to location, like scout and just kind of figure out the environment before you get there if you can. But yeah, I feel hopefully like that Pinterest thing has kind of died down a little bit. I'm talking like chalkboards and the kind of elaborate setups in the back of pickup trucks is not my jam. But like and a gal in this audience really, really likes quilts. And so she, brought a quilt for her family to sit on because it's like her grandma's quilt, things like that. Like just have conversations, talk to them about maybe taking that as a starting point, and then just to be like, and like, it just all depends on the environment and how we work off from that starting point. If that kind of answers.
Yeah, then that's very helpful.
Communication is like the biggest takeaway for me is just communicate.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope that helps. I am the worst. I cannot answer a single question normally. Like the thing about it is.
Is that like trial and error, YouTube?
Trial and error. Trial and error. Like I know. Yeah. And then if I got really stuck, I would try to find a YouTube video, but I feel like sometimes I would get in these like little corners where I'm like, I don't know how to even look this up. So a lot of it, like if I could find it through a YouTube tutorial, I'd be like, I would try, but honestly, I don't know the greatest YouTube channels to even watch. So I would just be search bar, like how to, and then I wouldn't get the best. I would get like a start, but okay. Like this one time, like I think the one that I probably use YouTube the most with is creating those advertisements. Cause I was like, man, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know the dimensions even. So I'm like looking up the dimensions of copy in an advertisement. And then I look up how to posterize in Photoshop, and it's I'd find a YouTube video that wasn't exactly, but I got a starting point. But yeah, no, most of it is trial and error and just like playing around and learning that way. I wish I took classes. There's so many available now. Like God, when I really started digital photography, like, you know, it was just kind of, I don't know how long UAF has had a program, but you know, when I was in grad school or just, you know, becoming a teacher at that point, and I just didn't have time to really like invest in more school when I was already in school. So really it was just trial and error. And so, yeah, my stuff was really bad for like 3 years. It was like, again, it's in the vault.
Your pies are so sculptural. Do you have any background in pottery?
No.
Because you could make those
I
pies.
took 2 classes and the teacher was so kind not to fail me. I remember one thing she told me was like, "You're a painter, huh?" And I was like, "How do you know?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I like took, I don't know, I took 3 courses up at UAF and the class was marvelous. The teacher was amazing, but like, I just could not. I wonder if I'd do better now, because back then I was just so 2D that I was like, I don't get this. And I struggled so much. And I remember I made a Marie Antoinette vase where the head came off and I was like so proud of it. But then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to post this ever. I'm so proud of it. And I look at it now, I'm like, what is this? Like, it doesn't look. I was so proud of the concept that I didn't really think about how well I executed that, pun intended there.
Paper mache.
Yeah.
Troll.
My troll head. Yeah, that was another rabbit hole I went down. I go down these rabbit holes where I'm like, I love the Henson Company. I wish I worked for the Henson Company in the 80s. How can I recreate that all the time? Well, I'm just gonna learn, like, so I got really into, so I started to learn all the history of the labyrinth and Brian Henson doing the voice of Hawk. Yeah, it just got real crazy. And yeah, so again, I just like to stay curious. And that's for me when I tell my students in middle school, I'm like, you know, like the best thing you can be is curious, because that means that you care and you're going to follow that. Like, to me, being curious is the best thing, because you're just going to keep learning and wanting to learn. It's really addictive, actually.
Crazy is good. Continue on. Like I said, I have 2 more questions. One is, so it's Wharton Field not dead? Are you
kind of dead, kind of not? So
are you resurrecting?
it's resurrected right now, but then I don't know. So like every year, like, so when I started teaching at Ryan, I mean, my whole thing was, I'm like, I'm going to do photography to make ends meet when I'm in grad school, when I'm not getting paid to, you know, intern as a teacher. And then I kind of fell in love with it. I love meeting people. I'm really sociable. I'm like an extrovert. I really like meeting people and going to their homes. It's really cool to kind of see where they live. It's like, get a snoop around. So I got really like kind of addicted to meeting people in that aspect of it. And it's really fun. And I've made so many really cool connections like around town, just meeting people. And so now, like when I go, I'm like, I know so many people. It's just really cool. But then I was like, you know, life is hectic. I should probably dial this back again, you know, like, and every year I dial it back, then I'm like, actually I'm booking. And so I'll probably do the same next year, where like, I think for me, I found that sweet spot of just, you know, not overwhelming myself, maybe having 12 shoots a year and that's it. And that way I can really take care and like really pour myself into them as well. Cause that, man, there were times where I had like 70 shoots in the summer and I was like, this is insane, you know, because imagine the 6, 8, 9, 10 hours of editing each one. I was a monster for a whole year. So just dialing it back. I don't do weddings anymore. That's been a huge thing for me, is just letting that go. That gives me anxiety. Weddings do. It's just, maybe I'm not made for it. So.
Okay, so I'll hit you up. You've taken pictures of my family since my kids were little, and you've given us a real idea.
Stop, you're gonna make me cry. Stop it, Summer. No, you can't make me cry.
It's true. And one other question, is this your first time being included in Rarefied Light?
Well, I don't think I've entered. Don't hate me. I'm just speaking here.
Not have an image in the
I don't know. No, I miss deadlines like crazy.
Well,
In the future, yeah, and that's, and I've seen my friends' work go in there, and it's been really just such a cool collection. And every year I've been like, I should enter, but like honestly, I have imposter syndrome a little bit with photography. I always feel like I'm like, I don't want to, like, cause I don't know, imposter syndrome a little bit, you know. Okay, maybe. Okay, and then I think that's it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Lindsay, for
Yeah,
showing
thanks
up and
for
giving
me.
us not just
Thank you.
amazing
Yeah, thank you for
breakdown
coming.
of everything that you do, but also the demo, talking about AI, how to
Yeah.
appropriate use it, and how social media kind of influences you as well, and how you create and encourages. And so a lot of good lessons. So thank you.
I
so
hope
much.
it wasn't too.
No,
Every time I tried to hone it in, I was like, but wait, I want to add this other thing.
yeah, I think that's
started at
that's
30.
one thing that you've got to recognize as a photographer. It's not just taking pictures. It's not just editing.
No.
It's coming up with that concept. It's trial and error. It's failing a lot.
Yes.
And constantly trying to learn. It's not something that you just get in a classroom. It's what you do
And then
on
it's
weekends.
magic. Yeah.
And it's roping your children in and not letting them move out of the house at all, so that they can continue to be your models for the rest of your life. Right?
Like a Grey Gardens kind of a situation, or
but I think that's really important to recognize that it's just such a multifaceted approach to not just art but life and creativity and all of that.
well,
So
thank you so much
yeah.
for inviting me.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thank you guys for coming. It's been fun. And thanks for zooming in.